right, and we're back with the Recreate Meaning podcast, and we're talking about a topic today that Aaron has not disclosed to me, and I will throw it away to Aaron.
Yo. Okay.
High energy.
Yeah. And
Let's talk about something sad. No, I'm
it's
joking.
gonna be it's gonna be sad. It's food shortages. Um,
Ah.
I know. I know. We'll do it. We'll do some happy podcasts in the future.
When pumpkins aren't $20 a kilo.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
They get annoyed.
so I've been tracking food shortages for ages. Like I'm not the only one. A lot of people have, but
Mm.
up until a couple days ago, at the time of recording, no one was acknowledging it.
Mm.
No one official was not acknowledging it, which is so damn ridiculous because in 2020 and 2021, there were times when you could go to the grocery store and there would not be meat and vegetables.
Yeah, I did not
And they
like
would,
that.
yeah, no, that makes me uneasy as all hell. But they would say there is no food shortage. It's just because of blah, 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 whatever.
Mm.
And maybe that was true at the time, but I've been tracking the levels of food waste and the supply chain disruptions that had consequences.
Mm.
And I think it's getting to the point where we are getting close to actual food shortages. And the official narrative is beginning to acknowledge this.
Yeah, it seems to be more prominent on Reddit and stuff as well. And like there's been some weird news things
Mm.
on Facebook and stuff about people dumping tons and tons of avocados and stuff for some reason. Like
Yeah, that's the kind of supply chain disruption that actually has consequences, which, you know, we'll sort of view it today as there's a system that produces a total amount of calories.
mm,
And then there's a system that distributes those calories to hungry people,
yeah.
and both those systems are in jeopardy. So,
Okay.
first of all, we'll just look at um, off of the Australian government agriculture website. I
Yeah.
just got a list of the commodity prices,
Mm.
and everything's up. Everything's up significantly.
Just on like a price level or like is it a low quantity and then a high price?
Well, I think it's supply chain disruptions have put the
Okay.
price up,
Yeah.
but wheat, corn, cotton, canola, cattle, and dairy, they're all up in price. Like,
Mm.
what do we got here? Wheat's up 100% since last year,
Double
and
the
it was up
bread.
100% last year.
Everyone ready
Um,
for that $9 loaf of bread? Like,
yeah, corn's up, like, cotton's up, sugar's in everything.
mm,
God, so many things are just up in price, and the commodity prices will fluctuate. So I don't want to worry too much about what the specific price is today. The point is they're more expensive than they were a year ago,
mm,
and a year ago they were more expensive than they were the year before.
mm. I know, my wallet feels it.
Yeah, you can't. It's so funny because for a while they were saying that there is no price increases and stuff like that, and then now you can't really make that argument anymore because you just go to the shops or go out to dinner and you can see it.
Yeah. Not easy to go out for dinner anymore.
And it's not as satisfying often.
Yeah.
Um, so the supply curve shift. We can just use economics to answer what's happening here,
Yeah.
and this is a little bit of a funny point because there's something in economics called neoclassical economics.
Yeah.
That's your starting point. It's your basic economics. It's kind of fallen out of favor in the academic world because there's many. Tell you what, there's not even many cases. There's cases where it doesn't apply,
Yeah.
but there's cases where it doesn't apply because you don't have enough data,
Mm.
and what you're plugging into your model appears to give a I don't know, appears to break the foundations of neoclassical economics. But usually, in your limited understanding, you've basically it's like doing a very very dumb math equation and saying it's wrong. It's like no, maybe I don't.
It's not using the right tool for the right job. But I
Yeah,
remember you saying that this particular form of economics applies now because a lot of the factors are on the board. So it's like
yeah, exactly.
all the parameters of what you're trying to say are there, so therefore the model is correct.
Yeah, yeah. If there ever was a time to use neoclassical economics and look no further, it's now.
Okay.
So, um, when there's a supply curve shift, I'll use that term, but then if you want to look more into it, look more into it.
Yeah.
It just means lower quantities supplied at every price point.
Okay.
And when a supply curve shifts to the left, that means that the price has increased to the point where some buyers are forced out of the market.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it goes. It eventually the supply curve moves off the board, and some people are left unable to afford what they want. So, just to use a little bit more normal language,
Yeah.
say that there's a corn shortage, which there won't be a corn shortage, but that's why I chose it for the example. Say that a farmer is willing to sell his corn for $5 a cob.
Hmm.
If all the corn from the harvest is sold, he'll be happy.
Yeah.
But if you couldn't afford the $5 corn, you miss out.
Hmm.
And this is what it's like during a shortage for the people with the least money. So this is what we're worried about.
And that can be sometimes whole countries, right?
Yeah, yeah.
No one's
So
corny.
so why is the supply curve shifting? There's 6 reasons. Let's just go through them.
Okay.
One, the number of sellers in the market. So if the number of sellers in the market goes down, there's less supply, obviously.
Yeah.
So China currently isn't planting a lot of their crops because of their zero COVID policy,
Hmm.
meaning that their farmers haven't been out to do the work at the start of the season. And if you miss the start of the season, you're in trouble. You miss the rest of it.
Yeah.
Um,
Nothing
yeah,
blooms by the time you need it.
yeah. The nature doesn't stop for the zero COVID policy.
Hmm.
Um, Ukraine has a war going on. You probably heard about it.
There's a lot more food going to the wars, right? To feed the soldiers. Is that what
Oh
that
yeah, yeah,
means?
yeah.
Yeah.
You've got to redistribute food to make sure that these people are looked after.
Yeah.
India has decided they're not going to engage with the international export market and with their wheat,
Hmm.
which they're one of the big producers in the world. They're just saying none for anyone else who needs it, all for us.
Fair
Which
enough.
they're looking after their own before they're worrying about the rest of the world. It is kind of hard to fault them for that.
Yeah.
Um,
Especially during
Especially
a
because they are a nation who has high poverty. Like,
yeah. Plus that it's like I guess they don't want to fund someone else's war. Could be a
um,
reason. Or
the southern US, which you would have hoped that they would have been the saving grace here, but they've had high levels of rainfall, unseasonably high levels of rainfall,
yeah.
and they're quite delayed in their planting. So usually for planting the grain crop at this point in the year, they should be 83% done,
Yeah.
and today they're 49% done.
So they need like another whole half a season just to get their bread off the fucking onto the trucks.
Well, not quite a whole half a season, but if the longer it takes them to get the plants in the ground, if they miss out on planting some, that's just less grain that's going to reach the market. Like,
Yeah. Hence the increase in price.
yeah. And Russia, who's also a big grain producer, I don't even know if you can buy from Russia at the moment. I think that all that's just become politically impossible to navigate.
Yeah. They're not saying it explicitly, but it makes sense.
Yeah, I think you have to pay extra tax and stuff like that, and I don't know. I didn't even
Yeah.
look into it because it'll update so quickly in response to the invasion, and as they move towards peace, it will change. But then if it flares back up, it will change again. So I don't even want to bother saying what the rules are,
Yeah.
let alone bother looking them up.
Yeah. I gotcha.
Um, so two, so factor prices. So things relating to the production, if they change in price, the price of the final good that's produced changes.
Yeah.
which currently we're in a big fertilizer shortage,
Are we?
and we are, yeah.
Jesus.
Russia's one of the highest producers of fertilizer as well. They were kind of our saving grace on this one, which, so we're not going to be getting that fertilizer.
Yeah.
Uh, the gas and oil industry, part of their productions generates fertilizer in some way. I don't know the specifics of it, but
Like a byproduct of something they make, maybe vodka or
yeah,
something.
something like that. Yeah.
That's very
So
stereotyped, but
so we got fertilizer shortages, which is causing higher prices. So there's two problems there. Some people can't afford the fertilizer and they're not putting it on the fields at all. And if you've been fertilizing the field year on year, every year for 40, 50 years, and then one year you just leave it off,
yeah.
that fertilizer was actually part of the ecosystem in that field.
Yeah.
All the fungi and stuff in the soil, well, one, it will be depleted because the fertilizer replaces it in sort of like the ecosystem. And two, all the microbial life that's relying on that fertilizer and doesn't get it, that's going to die off. And then, you're going to put plants into already damaged soil that isn't being supplemented. Like, it's just not going to work for the people who don't get it.
Yeah. Even if you do get like produce out of it, it's going to be suboptimal anyway.
Yeah. And then for the people who are paying the higher costs for it, that's just going to get passed on to consumers eventually.
Mm.
Um, unless they can't afford to sell their products, in which case their products will be dumped, which that's been happening a shocking amount. Like, the price of avocados has fallen recently because, well, it was simply the case. Avocados got really popular like 9 years ago,
Mm.
and it takes about 7 years for an avocado plant to reach production. So people started putting all these plants in the ground, hoping to take advantage of the avocado boom. And now they're arriving, 7 years late to the party, and they're all arriving at the same time. And then they've got to find people to harvest their avocados and package them into the trays they package them into and send them to the supermarket.
Mm.
And the supermarket's not paying very much for avocado anymore. You've probably seen them at like $1, where they
Mm.
used to always be, $3. Now they're $1. And for these farmers that can't get the prices that they're
Yeah.
expecting to get,
Yeah.
they can't afford the labor. Oh, sorry, just the dog.
That's
They
good.
can't afford the labor. So what they're doing is they're just dumping their avocados.
Yeah, because what else are you
And
meant to do with it? It's awful.
yeah, and you really don't want to see them dumping food, but when they can't afford to bring it to the supermarket, that's what they do because. Hang on, give me
Yeah,
1 second.
they don't want to take. They don't want to pay. Like, if you pay $1 for an avocado, they don't want to pay 60 cents in shipping to get like a 2 cent fucking profit when the 2 cent profit doesn't even cover the seeds that went in the ground.
Yeah, that's it. A lot of the time, any money they'll make won't even keep them in the market, so it's not good.
Yeah.
The third one, so production technology.
Yeah.
Now, agriculture is a weird one for this because there's a science of agriculture. There's kind of like a bioengineering element to it
Yeah.
where they're doing amazing things. They're growing plants that nature has never produced for itself, and they're getting plants that nature has given us to do all sorts of things that the plants have never done.
Mm.
But it a lot of this technology is yet to make things overall cheaper and more reliable.
Mm.
We haven't quite figured that out yet. So there's stuff coming down the pipeline, but I don't see anything that's going to be the saving grace for the current shortage,
Yeah.
unless I'm just unaware of it.
Or like
Um,
some. Sorry. I was gonna say there's
no,
no one out there creating wheat in like a small field at a massive rate that we're aware of.
yeah, there are some people doing some really impressive things though within the context of a more in harmony with nature. So
Mm.
less of a scientific wonder and more of it's just a natural brilliance, which the healthier the ecosystem is, the more that you can produce. And
The more you get
these
out of the
are
plants.
yeah, there's
Mm.
writers, there's Wendell Berry, Gene Logsdon, Joel Salatin, John Kemp, and they got this style of agricultural innovation and organization that could really, really help with these shortages.
Mm.
It's a lot more in line with natural processes that already exist in the soil
Yeah.
that he wants to be on the podcast, apparently. um,
Hmm.
um, but these people who are like there's a good example. Joel Salatin, he produces a lot of produce per acre.
Hmm.
He produces an absurd amount compared to anyone else,
Yeah.
but he doesn't use fertilizer, and he's never used fertilizer.
Hmm.
And he also doesn't require a vet to be on hand for all his animals, which he's got many,
Hmm.
because he's he's working so much in line with nature that he's getting this absurdly high production rate with very little disease. Like, we want to see things organized this way, but if you read his work, you can see that he's some sort of organizational genius,
Hmm.
and that to copy what he's done would be very, very, very difficult.
Just because he's just so on top of it, you know, he's one of those Pareto distribution kind of
Yeah, oh
legends.
yeah, he's absurdly organized and smart.
Hmm.
What's going on out there? But Teddy's interested in it. He
Yeah.
on the podcast. That's what we're doing right now.
Yeah, we're doing the podcast, Eddie. Say hello.
Okay. So the next thing, taxes and subsidies make an effect on the supply chain. On the supply curve.
Yeah.
If they say, all right, everybody who produces corn's got to pay us an extra 10 cents per cob, or whatever, that would be high. But
Yeah.
what's going to happen is we'll see less corn come to market, because some people will be like, well, I can't make money then. I'm just not going to bother with it. Currently, agriculture is already heavily, heavily subsidized.
Yeah.
A lot of the farms don't generate profits for themselves, and they rely on government money to keep them operating. So it's really not clear that in an already heavily subsidized industry, which can't stand on its own 2 feet without, help, that giving them increasing amounts of money is going to help. Like, once
Yeah.
you've given them better equipment, and you've lowered the costs of certain inputs, continually throw money at it, you're just going to get more and more people taking advantage of that. Like, you
Yeah.
can't keep just throwing money at it. It has to get more organized.
It would be better if there was less taxes on the products, I guess, and less just
Well,
giving
yeah,
money
yeah,
out, you
yeah.
know?
They could take the taxes away. That would be a good thing.
Just on like, because you said the tax on the corn, and then you got that's like a tax to the consumer, and then you got the tax on the fertilizer, tax on the fuel, tax on the transport, like
Hmm.
it's
Yeah,
complex.
yeah. All of that does just sort of result in higher prices and less supply. Which, what do you expect? These people have a business. They're trying to produce a good. You tell
Mm.
them, all right, while you're doing that, give us some of your money. Obviously, they're going to run a little less optimal than they would if they were just, left alone.
Yeah.
The other side of that argument is that the tax money could be spent on something which helps everybody, but I don't think that they're as good at that as they think they are.
Yeah. Plus, it's too busy paying administration things anyway.
Pretty much, yeah. Um, so the prices of related goods. So
Hmm.
this will also shift the supply curve. It should be the case that if the price of a related substitute product increases, then demand should shift in response. So if the price of bread goes up, maybe we buy something. There's like corn-based tortillas or whatever. Tortillas, sorry. I say it wrong. But if somebody likes pumpkin, but then sweet potato has gone down in price, maybe you'd be like, oh well, I'll just get sweet potato. It's orange. It's similar.
Yeah.
But we're seeing all these agricultural products go up across the board. So just because one thing increases in prices, I don't think it necessarily means that money will be diverted to a cheaper product if the cheaper product's also gone up in price. Like, we're just seeing a more generalized inflation in the commodity prices.
Yeah. There's no swapping in and out of things here. It's just like everything. No matter what you buy, you're getting ripped off. Well, not ripped off, but it's not a good deal for either party.
Oh yeah, it's going to be more expensive.
Mm.
And then this is the probably the only one that may work in the favor. It's the expectation of future prices. So people respond to a shifting supply curve in advance because entrepreneurs try to take advantage of a higher price as a
Yeah.
chance to jump into the market. So
Mm.
everybody's pretty sure that things will be more expensive in the future when it comes to food. So that incentivizes people now to start getting organized, to start producing food to bring to market.
Yeah.
That may be the only thing here that has a chance to pull the supply curve back the other way, but these people got to get to the market. Like they got to actually produce their goods and get it to market. So
Which
it's
can
going to
be,
take a little bit of time.
which would be like a 10-year process, you know?
Well, it could be, yeah.
Mm.
So I am hoping that household production, which could be started very quickly, will start to kick in and maybe take a bit of pressure off that supply curve, but we'll see.
So this is the proposed solution to a lot of the price increases and stuff like that. You've said this to me before that if everybody makes a little bit, then we might be able to stint the market and make sure that there's enough food going around.
Yeah, that's exactly my solution because I there's what they call monocultures and factory farms,
Yeah.
and it's really not clear to me that more monocultures and more factory farms is going to help,
Hmm.
especially because like with our shop we got goods that aren't even related to agriculture that just need to be sent on a truck, and people are having trouble getting them on trucks and getting them to
Getting them to
rock up.
us. Yeah.
Yeah, so
And some of these things don't even have shelf life. So it's like
I know
they could have made them
insane.
like fucking 4 years 4 years
Yep.
ago and it would have been fine. But anyway, it baffles me.
Um, yeah. So we're also dealing with a demand curve shift at the same time.
Yeah.
Um, and with the demand curve shift, it means less is demanded at every possible price point.
Hmm.
So there's 6 reasons a demand curve will shift. One, consumer preferences or tastes.
Hmm.
If everybody stops wanting something, obviously they stop buying it.
Yeah. Makes sense.
It may be the case that we could do a lot of good for a food shortage by basically saying, all right, there's giant factory farms and there's monocultures.
Yeah.
Currently, they're very unstable.
Hmm.
The alternative is more of like the organic classic farm, the kind of what you picture when you sing Old MacDonald Had a Farm,
Yeah.
with all the different animals and stuff like that.
Yeah.
If we said, somewhat as a society, we want to lean into that more organic way of producing food, we'd get a food with a higher nutritional quality that would be better for the environment to produce. And I just, I got to reiterate the nutritional quality stuff. There's
Hmm.
actually tons of stuff indicating that if we were eating better food, a lot of our big societal problems might go away very quickly.
Yeah, because people have more energy and cut less corners and do less things to try and get an edge up. They, like I feel like shit all the time when I just try and eat vegetables and meat. So weird.
Well, yeah, there's a thing where the nutritional quality of the vegetables and the meat is going down, and some of those being low in certain nutrients has some very unexpected consequences. Like
Hmm.
one of them is if you're low in potassium, you will be suicidal. That's one of the indicators that you're low in potassium,
Jesus.
which you can always come up with a good reason to be suicidal because the world is flawed and broken in so many ways that
Yeah.
if you have the feeling, you can attribute a reason to it.
Hmm.
But if the reason you have the feeling is a potassium deficiency, and that the feeling would actually go away if you ate a banana, which that's incredible. Like it's kind of it sounds funny, but there's
Yeah.
people who this happens to.
Hmm.
Um, then you can, oh God,
You can stave off that absolutely disastrous problem from everybody. Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah, it's unreal.
and it's like
It's the
you
same with there's
yeah.
riboflavin, that
Hmm.
one, and that one is related to mood stability, and if you got a deficiency, you act very erratically.
Hmm.
And erratic people are really, really hard to deal with. They destabilize whatever they're dealing with because they are erratic. That's what they do.
Yeah.
So if you can have eggs that contain, your daily amount of riboflavin, and I hope I'm saying that right. I've only ever read the word.
So good.
Oh my god. I got this puppy. He's sad. Morgan just left, and he's just upset.
Hmm.
Um, if you can correct this nutritional deficiency across the population
Hmm.
by having higher quality food, and then across the entire population, a portion of the erratic people becomes stable. The effect that that has on workplaces and overall even supply chains, like it can have a really really good effect.
Yeah, it sucks because considering the situation that we're in, we're more likely to see more destabilization and more chaoticness and more lack of nutrition before it gets better.
Yeah, 100%. It's scary as.
Plus,
um
that's useful to know.
yeah, yeah, it is good to know. You can see it with the eggs that we get from our chickens compared to the store eggs. Our chickens, first of all, the yolks are yellower, but the way that the eggs cook up,
Mm.
they just when you're cooking them, they turn from raw egg to cooked egg a lot quicker.
Yeah.
And I've heard people say that that's because there's more protein in them.
Mm.
That it's easier for the heat to cause it all to bind together.
Yeah.
Um, which, if the eggs I'm getting are higher in protein, and I'm feeding my chickens a pretty diverse diet, they live pretty well. So
Mm.
I think it'll be the case that if everybody could benefit from these sort of things, it'd be really good. Um,
Yeah.
there's Okay, another reason supply curves will shift: the number of buyers in the market. So currently, there's third world nations that are being priced out of the market for some of these commodities. Like they just can't buy them this year because they're too expensive,
Mm.
and they won't be able to buy them next year because they're probably going to be more expensive, and potentially even the year after that they could be more expensive again.
Mm.
Um, if these potential buyers are just saying, "Look, we can't afford it now. We're not going to be able to afford it when it's more expensive," then it's the case that farmers won't plant the allocation of crops that would usually go to them, because why would you plant it if you're not going to be able to sell it?
Yeah.
Um, and when there's a food shortage in a society, the levels of destabilization, I mean, it's rapid. You see, you see things politically degrade very, very quickly. It gets violent very, very quickly. And the damage done in the violence, whether the people or property, it lasts a long time. It's very, very hard to get back on track after a period of um, political destabilization. There's an example out of South Africa from, it was last year. It was I think it was June last year in South Africa. They had a food shortage that ended up in political instability that got violent very, very quickly,
Mm.
and the highways become unsafe. There was
Jesus.
dairy farmers. These dairy farmers have milk trucks, which it's kind of like a fuel tanker, but for milk, I guess.
Yeah.
And you need specialized equipment to transport fresh milk. They didn't want to risk sending their trucks out on the road because to lose a truck would be a massive cost.
Yeah.
So they started just dumping their milk. So then,
Awful.
in response to a food shortage, no new food come to market, or at least no new milk.
Yeah.
Which that doesn't make the highways any safer. The problem just gets worse. And
Yeah.
then, as a added problem, there was the grain producers who were making feed for the cattle, which these dairy farms, they specialize in the dairy, but they kind of bring in the feed to supplement the cows from outside sources.
Yeah.
So the grain producers were too scared to send their trucks on the highway. So you ended up in a situation where you had cows starving as a result of some very short term instability. And then when you lose all those cows, I'm not sure how many of the cows died or had to be culled or whatever. But once you lose dairy producing cows in the in the middle of their life,
Mm.
you've then got to go to the trouble of now you've got to breed cows, you've got to get calves, you've got to raise them up, and
And you've got to
to
have
get your
feed for
dairy.
those as they grow up, you know?
Yeah, exactly. To get your dairy supply back online, it takes a while, and you've got to do it during sustained political instability and shortage. It's very, very hard to get the society back online. So
Plus, that's when you were talking last year about why the hell are we dumping milk when you can just make it into cheeses and other foods and stuff like that. It's like, you're
yeah, yeah, it's a real shame. It's a real shame on a society stability level to dump food ever.
yeah, to make them into other
There's
things.
there's not many things that collapse a society quicker than starvation.
Mm.
Let alone the fact that it's so bad for people to be starved.
Yeah, it's awful. It's awful to think
Um,
about too, but it's coming. It could potentially impact the world coming up. So
yeah, especially too, we were nearly on top of it. We were so close, and then now it's sort of rearing its head again.
yeah,
Um, it would be a real shame if the story of the beginning of the 21st century was for a period of time we got on top of starvation, or we nearly did.
mm.
We brought it to an all-time low, and then it went to an all-time high.
That would.
Because that's sort of what you would expect if you looked at it like a wave. You
Mm.
know, the
It's
waves
like
go high and then low.
it's getting like
We don't.
there'll
Yeah,
be we're
we
gonna
don't want that.
swing around to like a overabundance issue, and then swing back down into like everyone's starving.
Yeah,
Let's hope
I
not.
really hope it doesn't happen. Yeah, but that's some things just take this wave pattern, and if this is one of them, we want to make sure that we're ready for it.
Yeah.
So the number of buyers in the market has changed, and then there's the consumers' incomes. So everybody, I think, once you factor in inflation, has probably got a lower purchasing power this year than they did 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I think just about everybody, especially when you factor in things like fuel, rent, and mortgages have all gone up considerably.
Mm.
Oh, well, mortgages not so much yet, but I say mortgages have gone up because I took on an additional mortgage. I'm acting like that's a society problem.
Oh my god.
And
Yeah.
then there's have a look, consumers' incomes. Once again, with demand, the prices of related goods. If people can get food cheaper, they're gonna try purchase the cheaper stuff
Yeah.
when the other stuff becomes too expensive.
Mm.
But once again, all commodities are going up in value, so it's going to be hard to navigate the market and get a good deal. And finally, there's consumer expectations about future prices.
Mm.
As people expect higher prices for food in the future, they'll buy more now
Yeah.
because that's what you would do. That
Yeah.
you would, if there's higher prices coming, you buy things that will last now. And that only increases the shortage problem for people who can't afford to buy now, let alone buy at a higher price in the future.
You saw that kind of thing last year when all the COVID stuff kind of kicked off and like the shops were just empty. Sort
Yeah,
of. You're just like people buying absurd amount of mints and stuff. But
yeah, yeah. There's a lot of that happening. Um, well, there was a lot of that happening, and that's what they blamed for a lot of the shortages. But I just don't know.
I don't think
Like
that's
I
the
have,
full picture, you know?
yeah, my experience walking around the shops last year when there was no meat, because I was asking the people who worked there because I was very interested in it. They were saying they're waiting on trucks.
Yeah.
That's what they were saying. So the story that people brought it all, I mean, people brought it all, yes, because it's empty, but it wasn't getting resupplied.
Hmm.